Hi kids, I'm Larissa, and I'm here to read a story to you today. But I do have a few questions before we get started. I want to know if people know what a moral is. See, oftentimes when we watch movies or read books, there's always a moral to the story. So, does anyone have any ideas of what a moral is? Can anyone think of a movie or a book that maybe had a moral? I know one. Can anyone think of the moral for Frozen? Or I bet there's a few morals to that. Okay, so with that in mind, I want you to think about that when I read the book today. And today's book that we're going to read is Signs in the Well. And this is a story by Shahom Smith, and the illustrations are done by Valley Mitzi. So, before I get started, there is one other thing I'd like to ask. What do you think of this cover? Can you tell what maybe this is? Any ideas? Well, I will tell you that this is an etched print. So does anyone know what an etching is? Think of like the word sketch. Good guess, John, but etching is where they use acid to eat away at an image, and we'll go into depth with that further. And a print, just in case you're wondering, is where they use one medium to make multiple copies of the image. And you'll see that a lot at like craft fairs and other places. You've probably seen some in like cards that you've maybe gotten. And so I want you to think about the art as well as the morals when we go and read this book. So who's ready to get started? Young Akiva was a goat herder, experienced and skilled in his work. Do you see how they've got these intricate lines that almost look like they were just drawn onto, very thin? That's what etchings often look like. He knew how to take care of newborn kids, and he knew how to lead the flock off over the rocky paths. He knew how to play beautiful tunes on his shepherd's flute, and he never got lost in the hills, and knew where all the best tasting grasses grew. But there was one thing Akiva did not know. He did not know how to read. His family could not afford to send him to school. Instead, Akiva helped his father herd the goats. Akiva felt content. He liked leading the flock onto the hills to graze. He liked caring for the little kids, watching them grow, and thinking his quiet thoughts. Maybe some of you feel the same way he does. But sometimes at night, right before he fell asleep, Akiva would think, if only I knew how to read, then I'd really be happy. A person who knows how to read can study and become wise. One day, thought Akiva, one day I will learn. Maybe many of you have had ideas of things that you've wanted to learn, but maybe it's been hard for you to learn those things. I know I have some things that I am having a hard time learning as well. But years passed and Akiva did not learn how to read. At the age of 40, he still could not decipher the written word. It is too late now, he thought. I am too old to learn new things. If I started now, I would never succeed. Do some people think this too? That's right, Charlotte. One day, when Akiva was out herding his flock, he spotted a well. He hurried over to draw water for his thirsty goats, and he leaned into the well, and he noticed something strange. This was the first well he'd seen that had marks etched onto the walls. How did this happen? Thought Akiva. A person could never have reached so far down and made marks so deep. Maybe it was an animal? What do you kids think it was? But yeah, if you look down in this well, there's some etchings on it. Maybe you have seen that too when you've looked down a well or a deep hole. Akiva thought and thought, but couldn't find his answer. I will go to the study hall, he decided. I'll make sure to find a scholar there who knows the meanings of these signs. So, Akiva found a scholar who listened to his question. It's obvious, the scholar said immediately. The water in the well penetrated the stone. Water can cut stone? Asked Akiva. That seems impossible. Maybe some of you didn't know, but it is possible for water to cut stone. And he'll explain in just a second. Well, it didn't just happen in one day, answered the scholar, but slowly, over a period of many, many years. I read the answer in a book, the book of our people, said the scholar. There it is written, water wears away the stones. If you could read, you would know the answer yourself. Akiva dropped his head in shame, embarrassed that he was still unable to read. Akiva returned to the well. He looked closely at the signs in the stone and chanted softly, "Water wears away the stones. Water wears away the stones!" Suddenly, his eyes lit up. The water had worn into the stone drop by drop. If I work hard enough, Akiva thought, letter by letter, I can learn how to read. As the water made its mark in the stones, knowledge will make its mark in my mind. Akiva began learning, one letter and then another, words and then sentences. He studied more and more until he could finally understand difficult and complex books. Akiva was an excellent student. Only a few years after, he was able to teach himself and became a great scholar. Before long, he became very famous and had thousands of students. At times, when sitting at the study hall, Akiva would gaze out the window at the rolling hills and reminisce about his days as a shepherd. He thought to himself, "Today I am still a shepherd. I have become a leader of my people, and I am proof that it's never too late to learn." The end. So, what did you all think of the book? Did you see how the etchings and the story and the images and the writing all connected together to make a moral out of that story? Now, with what we've just read, we're going to talk about this a little bit, and then I'm going to tell you what our next project is going to be that goes along with this book. Alright, so the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to be making our own type of etched illustration prints. And what I'm going to first have you do is, now that we've gone over what we thought the moral of the story was, and we're just going over the etching and illustrations, I want you to get out a piece of paper and pencil and think of a time when you learned a moral from your own life's experiences. My example would be when I was younger, I helped an old lady cross the street, and later on I learned that she was the librarian and she helped me find out some books. So my moral of the story was, help people that are in need and they will help you in the future. And I'm sure you guys have other morals and lessons that you can think of too, from your own experiences. And if you can't, think about a book that you might have read, or another movie, or a moral or lesson that a friend had thought of. But what I want you to do is to make sure to write down all of these ideas on paper and maybe sketch out what that scene might look like. And then I'll go around with all of you, do a little check-ins, and we'll see which idea is the best, and we'll work on that from there. Once all of that is done, I'm going to have you all come around the demo table, and I'll show you what we're going to be doing and how we're going to be doing this etched print. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is we've got our half sheet of paper that we're going to be drawing our illustration on. And we have our crayons. So you're going to take out your crayons, and the first thing that you are going to do is drawing the background for your etching. So what you need to understand is the colors that'll show up underneath are going to be the colors that show up when you etch away at your print. So you can do patterns or shapes or just fun colors underneath, and that's what we're first going to do. So if you want to watch me, I'll show you an example of the colors underneath. Now that we have it all colored, the next thing we're going to do is actually take our black crayon, which I'll have lots of these supplied for you, and actually go over all of the colors and shapes that you just made. And you're going to want to make sure that you press down really hard to cover it. So once this is completely covered, then we're going to take our popsicle sticks and our toothpicks, and then we're going to etch out the scene that you had selected that you wrote out in the paper. So I'm just going to finish this, and then I'll pass around the test sample to show you what it'll look like. So now that we have our print all blackened out, this is going to be the part where you're going to be able to etch out your ideas. And so I'm going to pass this around for everybody, but just to show you, you can use the toothpick, and then as you see, you can etch out an image right below. And you can see where the different colors are. So you can see how over here, if I etch out a little bit of this, you can start to see some of the color that's popping through. You can see some of the yellows, some of the purples, some of the blues. Over here you can see some of the orange and yellow, and it's really fun to see how it's going to appear. And so you're going to use this to etch out a scene of a moral or a lesson that you've learned. And then what you're going to go with this is we're going to talk about how to write an artist statement. And that artist statement is going to be paired underneath your image. And I'll show you an example in just a second of what that's going to look like. Alright, so now that you've made your artist statement with your illustration, we're going to take it over to our artboard where it is settled on the other side of the room, where we're going to have everybody hang up their illustrations and their artist statements. And so with that, then we're going to do our little gallery walk, which we've had a few times in the past, but if you need a refresher, I'll discuss it. And then we're going to look through everybody's images, see how the image pairs with the written word, see if the moral of the story makes sense with the illustration, if everyone seems to understand what the prompts were, and then we're going to then get everyone back together and have everyone ask some questions and comments, such as if they felt like this was a good assignment, if they understood what the questions of the assignment were, if they were wondering how a certain student got something the way that they did, and stuff like that. And thank you for listening to my lesson, and I'll see you next time. Bye!